Let's take a quick tour of Jupyter Notebooks to understand how to use the platform before we get writing any real heavy code. And you could learn more about Jupyter Notebooks by navigating to their website, jupyter.org. But essentially, we're going to be using this tool to write our Python. Now, it's not necessary. You could write your Python in text files and a bunch of other IDEs to make life easier, but Jupyter Notebooks ends up being a really great, very powerful tool. It will look at how to use cells and why those are useful, and it's just an open source free tool, and again, which comes with a ton of features. It just makes writing Python a lot easier, and writing and testing Python a lot easier. So now that Anaconda is installed, you can navigate to Jupyter by going to Windows and typing Jupyter, and you'll notice that you'll have Jupyter Notebook Anaconda 3 here. And when you click on that, your Windows will bring up this command prompt, which just means that the server to run Python is running in the background. Do not close this window. If you do, you won't be able to run any more Python in Jupyter Notebook. So you can just minimize this or leave this to the side. And in my browser, which auto popped up on my other screen, is this screen here, which shows the Jupyter Notebooks, which runs in your browser. It's not a separate standalone tool. So to keep things clean and organized, we're going to put all of our files in a certain location under Documents. So here we're going to have our Documents folder. We're going to click on that to navigate. And I have a Pythons folder, so you could create something similar. But if you do not have that, you could create a new folder. Let's do now, and let's just actually put stuff in a new folder. So click on New and Folder, and that will create an untitled folder. There it is. And let's go ahead and click on that to check it off, and let's rename that to Python_training. And we're going to put everything in this Python_training going forward. Let's click on Rename. And there it is now. Let's go jump into that folder. So to create your first notebook, very similar, you could just go ahead and click on New. And we're going to do Python 3. Had you been importing another notebook, you could have done it via this upload tool. But let's click on Python 3. Everything should already be up and running. And that'll kick off a new browser, which brings up your first Python notebook. So let's quickly just navigate across the top here and just look at some of the functionality. So to a similar Word panel or Word document or Excel document, you're going to have your menu here with File, Save, etc. A handful of items you could do, rename. So let's go ahead and rename this workbook from Untitled to Jupyter Walkthrough, and you could pick any name you like. And let's take a quick look at cells here real quick. So this is where we're going to write all of our code. And essentially with Jupyter, you could create a series of cells, and over here you could say cell or insert cell below. We could write 2 lines of code. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to print some information. Print test. And when you run this command, when you run it, you're running individual cells at a time. So we have here print test. Now we could write another line, print test2, and for the print command, you're going to want to use parens in Python 3 and onwards. Python 2, you do not need the parens. And you can run test2. So essentially, it lets you run individual blocks of code together. But you'll notice that we'll also see that information is stored in memory. So it allows you to kind of break things out and test functionally. So if we were to say, and we'll look at variables later, but a is equal to 1, and run, nothing happens here. We can then say print a in a different cell, and you'll see that this prints. So all your code isn't collectively individual into a cell. It's spread out through these, and you could run these in different orders. So let's do a b is equal to 2. Oh, I'm sorry, an a is equal to 2, and then a print a. When we run this, we're just running a single cell. So a is still equal to 1, even though this a is equal to 2 came before it. But if we go ahead and run that cell now, and then run print a, it gets updated. To comment out code in Python, you're going to use the £. And now when you do that, this means this line of code will not get run. So if we had some more prints, this first line of code, oh, this b is not defined. Let's go back up here and create a variable for b. You'll notice that this first line of code gets skipped and it jumps to the second line of code. Up here in the top, there are going to be some more options that we could do. You could restart and clear all your output, and you could restart and run all. You could also run large pieces of code, but if you restart and clear input, you'll get prompted with this window here, and you'll notice that all of your output gets reset to the begin. So if you were to run this command here again in print b, you'll notice that b is not defined because it went through and wiped out all of these lines of code that were stored in memory. Another useful function is, if we want to add more cells, and there's some Jupyter Notebook commands, there's a lot of hotkeys that you could learn via some simple Google, but an easy way to do is just open the command palette here if you're unfamiliar, and you could grab anything here, so just type it in. We're going to del for delete cell, and it will delete the cell that we're in, and you'll notice that goes away. To go into that command mode, you just hit the escape key, and you will notice this bar on the left turns blue. Now that it's blue, we could hit the command key B, which it means insert new cell. Similar here, if we were to do insert cell below, we notice that we were in command mode, and I hit B, and that's how I created this new cell. So feel free to look through some of these shortcuts to code faster, and if you don't want to get too overwhelmed, you could always just call the commands from this window here. If we go back to where our Jupyter Notebook is stored, and we're going to go back to Documents, Python Training, you'll notice that this workbook we're working through is a IPYNB file. It is not a .py, which is a Python file. So we couldn't run, this isn't quite a Python script, it's a Jupyter Notebook file. So what we could do then is click on File and go to Download As, and we can download as a .py file. Windows will warn you if you want to do that, because a lot of times these are scripts and they can be malicious from other vendors, but since we know it's us, we could click Keep, and that will end up in our Downloads folder. And let's go ahead and grab that. Where did I call Jupyter Walkthrough? Here it is, this py file. Let's go ahead and just go put that back in our training folder to make life a little easier. And this is now a Python file, and you can now run, if you were to run this through command prompt, you would be able to run this Python script. So let's go ahead and try to do that really quickly as well. So to run Python scripts, we're just going to do that through command prompt by going to CMD to kick off a command prompt. And let's navigate to this entire path. So we're going to do CD to change directory. Paste that in. And we're going to call the script JUPYTER underscore walkthrough.py and run that. Oh, whoops. Oh, it's because when you need to run a Python script, you need to say py, like we learned in a previous lab, or Python if you mapped your environment variables. So py, and let's copy the name of this so I don't misspell anything, .py. Now when you run it, you'll notice that it went ahead and ran the script in the order of items that we had told it to run in. It went through, it printed test, then test 2. It assigned variables which we were not displaying, and then it printed out the value of variable 2. And that is a very high level of how to use Jupyter Notebooks. We'll go ahead and be using some of these cells to learn about basic commands in Python as we go forward, as a great way to learn the tool and learn basic Python.